Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast, episode number 51. This one brought to you by Cantex Roofing and Construction.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Alongside Chris Level, I'm Chois Woodman. Level, big sigh of relief. The Red Raiders get a victory on the home field. Texas Tech takes out the Houston Cougars on Saturday, and it doesn't, cure all the ails from some earlier losses in the season, but man, it just feels good to get back on track.
Yeah, man, winning is better than losing, always. So
absolutely,
yeah, and I think it's what people are starting to see is it doesn't make anybody feel any better, but I think the teams you've lost to are combined. Is it like 12-1?
2, I believe.
No, I don't.
Nope.
Not.
Nope, you're right.
Not. Yeah.
Wait,
Wyoming 4-1. They're only lost to Texas.
Yeah, West Virginia's got another loss too, though. Right?
They lost to Penn State. That's it.
Right. So yeah.
Well, I guess coming into
combined.
Yes,
okay.
Weekend. Yeah, coming into the weekend. Yes,
My bad. Yes, sir.
Sorry. So see, we're anyway. West Virginia beats TCU, and Oregon has rolled everybody, and you had them on the ropes. But everybody just wanted a result, and and you finally got one, and it's just funny how you all of a sudden decide to play kind of complimentary football. Like it seemed like everything except for defense in the first half.
Sure.
Except for defense in the first half, which I think you just kind of. It just wasn't. Houston really had their way and very efficient and converted third downs and drove the field like 75-yard drive after 75-yard drive after 75-yard drive. Got that cleaned up though, but offense played well. Special teams certainly played well, and the defense played really well in the second half. And then you win, you cover, you send everybody home happy. Check.
Yeah, and you mentioned special teams there. That sure helps when you throw that third element of football in, and they are a huge plus for you because that keeps the game close when your defense wasn't playing great complementary football or playing great football in general in the first half. So we hear Coach McGuire talk about that plan to win every week. I think you check almost every single box in that. It was just, we've been hearing Coach McGuire say the words bad football way too much this year. And I don't think he got that on Saturday. Finally, a good overall football game. It wasn't perfect, but man, that was the one of the best games you've seen from Texas Tech this year. And it results in a semi blowout win against a team that you're supposed to be a double-digit favorite over. So it's this is the version of the team we expected to see from day one. And if you can, here's a Matt Wells phrase, stack some wins, then it will it'll feel a lot better. And you got to figure out a way to win on the road.
That's a coaches say that all the time about stacking days, making deposits, stacking wins, getting on a roll, creating momentum, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
I think what you're seeing is, and I've speaked about this issue with this team well into this past summer, in that wasn't sure who your guy was, if you had a guy who could carry you a little bit when the going got tough. You don't have an answer to that. You still don't have an answer for that. And so what this team now, I think 5 games in, it's plenty of body of work to see. It doesn't mean they're a finished product by any means. It doesn't mean one won't emerge. But to this point, I think it is what it is. You are a collection of parts. And I think that yesterday against Houston, the collection of parts, because Cameron Valdez citing, Loic Fungi, where you been, young fella?
That was
Sighting
nice.
there. I think those two were were very specific with those two guys just kind of being. Dre McCray, where you been? Well,
Yeah.
guess what? And so that's kind of, it was just a little bit from a lot. How about that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the best way to describe kind of who you are. Miles got involved. I thought Xavier White had the best yards after catch type stuff. And complementary football is something we talk about because it's when the offense plays well to the defense, or the defense is kind of gassed and the offense goes on these longer drives to give them a rest, and it just, like, everything is kind of this yin and the yang, and it's meshed together, whatever. But I think that you had playmakers, if you will, to use that term, complementing each other, because it wasn't anybody major in anything. I mean, Jerron Bradley was hardly even out there yesterday, that he did nothing memorable. The tight end group, for the most part, did nothing memorable.
Right.
But nobody really focuses on that because so many other guys did a little bit, which equaled a lot, and I think it was fun to kind of watch. And I think that's going to have to be kind of the way this thing goes, man. You're going to have different guys step up with different big games or different moments. There's not a lot of quality drop off in some of your depth, which is a nice way of saying you don't have a superstar or an NFL bona fide dude out there, But this is what it'll look like if you're gonna put it together. And I think you got a little bit from a lot of different folks. And anyway, it's fun.
Yeah. Fun. That's what this season has been lacking as a whole. So fun on Saturday at Jones Stadium. Crowd was good as well. I was impressed with the crowd, because you wonder, after a 1-3 start, is it going to be a little apathetic, or what we see out of that crowd? But it was solid, and you go and beat a Houston team that Tech has dominated in recent history. So that was nice to see. Behren Morton's play, obviously, struggles. Not the planned starter against West Virginia, has to come in relief duty for an injured Tyler Shuck. This is his team moving forward. What was your assessment of what you saw out of Morton on Saturday?
I think the word I would use with Behren was efficient. I think he never put your team in harm's way with, like, trying to force it. I think the best way to, it's efficient, which is another way of saying, last week Joey and Zach Kitley mentioned a lot. I think he was just trying to do too much. This week wasn't trying to do too much. I think he let, he was efficient. I don't know any other way to say it. It wasn't, I mean, Donovan statistically had the much better game. And I don't want to sit and say that Behren, like, managed the game. I think people get triggered when you hear that. It's almost like a negative comment, but this is kind of what we saw. And the reason I think it was so important in this one is because he hadn't thrown a pass all week until, like, a real pass, outside, until about 1:40 Central Time, and your game kicked off at 2:30.
Yep.
And so I think that, with knowing that, I mean, imagine how puckered up you are if you're the play caller, if you're the head coach, if you're the whatever, and you want to assume a lot of things, but you just don't really know, because guess what? You haven't seen it for 7 days. But I think they were able to take advantage and kind of major in the game a little bit, just because Behren at some level was gonna play. Always, that was always the plan. But until he got out there, and what kind of range of motion did he have, and what would he have the normal zip on it and all that stuff. But I think that, and then next thing you know, he can turn it loose a little bit. Next thing you know, he's out there throwing blocks near the goal line for for his running backs and stuff like that. But I just thought he was efficient. It was clean. He wasn't trying to do too much, and that's why I think he played so well. And there's going to be other games, make no mistake. There's going to be games where he's going to have to do a lot more, or they're going to, major in him, or the run game won't be working, and he's going to have to go do his thing. But yeah, I was very impressed yesterday for sure. It's something he can build on. Absolutely.
So is this a blueprint moving forward? Like you said, not every game is the same. There's differences from game to game, but your basic blueprint, is this what we see moving forward offensively, where you do lean pretty heavily on the running game? Tahj Brooks, as called by his head coach, your best offensive player, gets a big bulk, and then you see Behren Morton try to be just not disrespectfully, but a bus driver, a little more than a bus driver. Is that the blueprint?
Yeah, he's not a bus driver.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I know, but I
lack
think
of a better term.
This was a bit of a one-off just because of but I mean, they may have to repeat this until he can kind of get really right. And that may be sooner than later. I just know that the one issue that kind of helps the shoulder is just rest.
Yeah.
I just think that at some point, maybe it's Kansas State, maybe it's Baylor, maybe it's the end of the year against Texas. You're not going to be able to, even if you really want to,
right?
And everybody's telling you to do it, and you want to do it, and your offensive line is yelling at you to do it, and the running back is going, "I can handle it." It won't work. They're going to go, "Hey, not today," and you got to be able to do different things. What are your answers then? Yeah, there'll be some semblance of running game and all that throughout. I don't know if you have to quite major in it this much, but I think that if it's working, you're going to go to it. And much of what I'm going to say here revolves around the following. You simply cannot keep putting Tahj Brooks out there and letting him run it 25, 30 times a game and then asking him to pick up the blitz and all these things. It's otherwise the Tahj Brooks that you'll see in late October or early November is going to get worn down. Like it's not physically possible.
Right.
I think that everybody loves him. I think at some level he could probably handle it. I think he's got a future in this game. You don't want to use him up. You want to be careful with him. You want to keep him fresh. It's the same mentality that you had with Tony and Jalen last year when you fully admitted we kind of screwed these guys because they almost couldn't come off the field, and that's bad. And that's kind of where you're at with Tahj. So my point is, a lot of what you will be dictated by how much you major in this is going to be about Nehemiah Martinez and Cameron Valdez. And I think, Nehemiah, he's fumbled it a little bit. I think Cameron is really good at carrying the ball. I think all the other stuff that you ask a running back to do, he's not really great at yet. And so, can we find a happy medium there where we can get some of these other guys involved? Because I could tell you, and you could see it yesterday, they just almost forced themselves to sit number 28 over there next to them for a bit.
Yeah.
Just,
had to.
Yeah, it's almost just like discipline because you gotta keep this kid healthy. You got to keep him fresh. And yeah, he's the best option, but at some point you got to give him a blow, man, and let another guy kind of develop a bit and help him take the load off. So anyway, long answer, but great question. I totally get it, but that's how I would answer that.
So last one on Behren specifically. My bird's eye view is different from yours. You're down there at field level, but it seemed like, at least from where I was sitting, that there really wasn't any hindrance on throwing the football. He looked pretty close to 100%. Was there any hiccups that you noticed?
He's dealing with some pain. You could tell, but I don't think that you could tell necessarily by any of the throws or anything like that. But I could just tell, like, the in between. That it's a pain tolerance thing. Pat played through this similar issue in 2016, I guess it was. And it just kind of hurts. And I'm sure that after the game and early this week, I'm sure it really hurts. But it should steadily, get better as time goes. And, I think maybe he doesn't, throw for some of these days. And I don't know what that looks like this upcoming week compared to what it looked like last week when they just tried to be smart with him. because ultimately you need reps, you need practice, you need timing. I mean, all the things. I mean, it's hard, and it's this league is extremely competitive, as we are seeing. I think it's interesting because the newbies in this league are a combined 1-7 in the league. But I think BYU with the only win, which was over one of the other new guys in Cincinnati. Everybody else, they're 0-2. Are the new conference members, and so it's a very competitive league, and so you don't want to take anything for granted. But I thought he was, for the most part, handled it just fine, but you could tell he's not 100%. How about that? And I think he played through it, and I think it was fine. I think he'll continue to do that, and you just have to protect him, and yet, the thing that's awesome is that he's laying a block out there near the goal line because he's a competitor. I mean, totally similar to Tyler Shuck sticking his head in there. I mean, you can't, these kids are competitors and they want to win, and you try to marry being smart with wanting to win, and sometimes one wins over the other at times. But it should be okay.
All right, got a couple questions from the audience regarding Tech football. This is a two-parter from Brandel. It says, first time we've seen the offense be successful for a full game. How or what can the coaches and players do to continue that? Also, defense had a slow start. Was that more schematic or personnel related?
Well, and I thought, I mean, maybe I'm in the minority, but I thought that they played really well against Oregon offensively. I thought throughout. I think, there were some mistakes in there. I think you also have to grade that one a bit on a curve because that's one of the best defenses you're going to see all season. But and this one, you don't have any turnovers. That one, you had way too many. I certainly get that. And the question about defense was what?
What caused the slow start? Was it more schematic or personnel?
I think that and you were missing a few pieces, and it got worse in the second quarter with no Deidreon Taylor-Demerson. But I think you have to credit Houston. Okay. I think that's about as good as Donovan can play with what you saw. He put a full game together in the first half. If I tell you before this game, he's going to throw for 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and 320-something yards, I guarantee you're looking at me right then and going, I think the Red Raiders are probably dropped to 1-4.
Yeah, I'm pretty nervous if you're giving me those numbers.
Yeah,
first half Donovan looked, not joking here, Heisman-esque. I mean, he looked as smooth as he could have possibly looked. Was hitting all the passes he needed to hit. He was making plays on third down. So I guess what happened to Houston in the second half? If you're crediting Houston, why did they hit such a wall in the second half?
Well, I think you did a few different things in the second half, but bottom line, you just played better. I think they tried to pressure Donovan in the first. I think that Tim really wanted to get after him or try to make him feel pressure. I think that Houston did a really good job of picking it up. I think Donovan kind of wiggled out of there a few times on some of the runs. I also think that they simplified for him, and he made his reads. He also made some really nice throws down the field as well. So, but I think you played a bit more coverage in the second half and maybe didn't try to pressure as much, which can, I think, to quote Joey, cloud his picture a bit. And I think because it's one or the other, like you can either play coverage and gamble on him getting loose and kind of cloud his picture when he drops back to throw, or you can make him have to make a quicker decision and hope that he makes the wrong one. And so they slightly tweaked it, but I thought it was interesting how much better you tackled in the second half compared to the first half. That certainly improved. Yeah. But football 101. Hey man, we got to tackle better. Well, and when you start doing it, and they ran a few more stunts and different things up front with their defensive line that I think maybe gave the Houston offensive line some problems, which maybe felt like there was more pressure than there really was at times. You just got after him one time, but I thought you really, I kind of just played more solid, and you had a lot of freshmen out there, man. Whew.
Yeah. Whole lot of freshmen. This question is from Mark. It says, we got to finally see Dre McCray's speed. Is there a way we can see that utilized a little better within the offense?
They've been trying. I think that they had him open a couple of times in Morgantown. They had him, but it's like the quarterback goes a different route, or that's the play that the pressure comes. I think they missed Coy Aiken a couple of times wide open, versus Houston, and it's just those,
Yeah.
So you're not always, but I think they've been trying to get Dre involved. Yes, I think that they are desperately trying to do that. And at some point, you'll hear from him just traditional offense wise, I think, and I hope that's sooner than later. I would like for that to be maybe Waco Saturday night. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, he is a weapon. I think they're trying to get him more involved for sure.
Yeah, would love to see that, but we saw this with Tyler, and we've seen it with Behren both. And this is really, if you're going back and watching film, you probably don't see if you're just following the ball. But there are receivers. We talk about the receivers not getting open. There are times, and I know every quarterback doesn't see open receivers, but there have been some times this year when you need a big play, and then you finally get that guy behind the defense, and the quarterback just doesn't see him. Is that just going through progressions, or just not great field vision, or how can that improve?
Or just feeling pressure, or you decide to get out of the pocket, which limits, when you move,
where you can throw. Yeah.
When you flush it, or get flushed out of the pocket, you're eliminating in some ways half of the field.
Yeah.
From what your options are, and so there's a combination of things, but. I know these guys have taken some criticism. I thought the offensive line played their best game of the season. I think they've kind of steadily gotten better. It's not where you totally want it, but I think that they now have a body of work together, which I think you're starting to see some dividends paid there with playing with each other now and kind of understanding what you're seeing, because they've really gone against some quality defensive linemen to this point, and that's not going to slow down. But the Houston edge guys are legit. Oregon, obviously, we know what Wyoming, that was their whole position group. The Mountain West Player of the Year was part of that group, I believe. And so they've really seen some dudes up front, and I think they've kind of just steadily gotten better, because I didn't feel like Houston's defensive line won many of those matchups in this game.
I agree completely. Yeah. So I've got one question for you, and then we'll move on to Baylor.
Is this from your brother?
No, I already read his. I already read his question. He's the Brandel from earlier. So my question for you, Level, is how was the experience this weekend? Because you got to see a lot of familiar faces. Obviously, the Hall of Fame part of the weekend was pretty cool. The ceremony Friday night was fantastic. Cliff Kingsbury couldn't have been more gracious. All of that was really cool. But I know down at field level, you got to hook up with a lot of Leach era people, including Sharon Leach, his wife, and all of this. How was that experience for you? And we got a very Leach-esque type of game too, which was ironic. The 49-28 game felt like we were back in the mid 2000s again. But just curious how that was for you.
Yeah, I think that's the fun part about sports, is that I guess on a Saturday right there, I probably maybe shed a tear, if I will admit it, at halftime. I was overjoyed with a win. I was appreciative of watching Sharon and her kids walk up the steps, and people are giving her a standing ovation. And then seeing people like Eric Ward come up to me, Rylan Reed come up to me, Stephen Sheffield come up to me, BJ Simmons come up to me, people like that who we get a fun view, and you build unique relationships throughout this kind of stuff. And I know what Mike meant to like those guys, but I know what the program and the school means to those guys. And they bled, sweat, and fought for it, on many a Saturday afternoon. And so, but yeah, that's sports, man. It makes you elicit all the emotions, and that's why we love it so much. That's why we get so frustrated with it. That's why we want to quit it at times, probably whether you want to admit it or not.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why you come running back and with open arms and give it a giant hug at times too, because it just, you run the gamut, and you get mad at yourself sometimes for caring so much. And then you like, I'm just not going to do this to myself anymore. And then and you just right back up to the trough, slurping up the water and all that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's the way I would describe it. It just it made me run on a Saturday afternoon in a semi-meaningless, nationally relevant game. It made me run through the full gamut of emotions, and that's that's the best way I can describe it. And I appreciated all of it. But I appreciate you asking me that.
So now moving on to Baylor level. And then I got one branding question, apparel question after that from one of our listeners. But Baylor, what a crazy weekend for them as well. They win 36-35 in Orlando. Most people gave them zero chance in this game, or very little chance in this game, and they shouldn't have had much of a chance in this game, because I'm kind of following just scores as the Tech game's going on and they're playing at the same time. See, it's 35-7 at one point. And late in the third quarter, it's 35-7. I don't think Baylor scores their first touchdown until with 3 minutes or something left in the third quarter. And this is kind of like shades of the Insight Bowl. But somehow they come all the way back and they beat UCF. What do we expect from the Bears, who were all but buried deep into that game and almost the season buried? It seems like they've got new life like the Red Raiders.
Well, I thought Baylor would play well in this game. I thought that's UCF with a backup quarterback, and that's a Baylor team that gets their starting quarterback back in Blake Shapen. Did I think it would be a 35-7 game at one point and Baylor would have this miraculous comeback? No, I didn't think it would play out like that. But I guess in the end, Baylor ends up winning, and it doesn't really matter how you get to that point. But I thought, because I think Baylor and Oklahoma State were kind of in the close to the Texas Tech category, in that there was a lot of people that felt like they would fare fairly well in the league race this year, based on, but they were also kind of like question marks too, or people kind of going, some people felt a lot better about them than others, but nobody felt like, okay, these teams are going to suck. They were always in that, like any discussion, this was like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th type category in the league out of a 14-team league. You have a Baylor team that won the conference championship 2 years ago. Then last year they roll the beginning of the season and then they lose out. And then you're like, okay, which one is it exactly?
Sure.
I know the version of Baylor that we saw last year, and you're going to get a full dose of Richard Reese and that some of that wide zone running game again this week in Waco. But again, like when you have quarterback issues, it's hard to like grade a team, because nothing against Sawyer Robertson, but he's not Blake Shapen. He's not the starter. And I think Sawyer Robertson was even dealing with an injury. Sawyer Robertson out of Lubbock Coronado, I think he dealt with an ankle issue and was kind of playing through that.
Yeah.
But they've got good skill. I think their question has been their offensive line has not particularly been great to this point. I think their defense, which is coached by Dave Aranda, has been kind of inconsistent. But this one will be an interesting one Saturday night, man, because I think you're trying to figure out Baylor, and this is going to be an emotional one.
Yeah.
For Joey, I would think at some level. There's the whole, because here's your storylines. Here's the menu. Can't win on the road. You're now 1-6. Guess who kicked your ass last year at home? The Baylor Bears did. It's your first trip back going to Waco.
Yeah.
After you helped them win a Big 12 championship, after you will be a huge part of that program, after you try to get the head job, all those things. It's your first return trip next, to McLean Stadium there on the Brazos River. And so there's all kinds of things revolving around this game. But it's, for Texas Tech, you could really set up a fun and meaningful game against Kansas State the following week if you can go kind of get you one on the road. But we're now to the point, you just call it what it is, man. You're now to the point where if you want any chance to be relevant in the conference race, these are games you must take care of business in.
Have to.
Yeah.
Yep. So you bring up the Joey part, the return home. Does that make this game any more difficult? Obviously,
it's a story that you and I, you people like us are going to talk about.
Joey is such a relationship guy. He is as relationship based as anybody you'll ever meet. And there are still guys on that other sideline that he coached and recruited. So it just seems so weird that you had a lot of really close, tight, good games. And I think most people would say the Baylor game last year was the worst game Texas Tech played.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just so odd that came against them. So was it an anomaly? Did it have anything to do with the who's on the other sideline?
We don't know. It also makes for an interesting one, like that game last year in particular, because it was also the worst you have, and it wasn't even close, the worst you've ever seen Behren Morton. I think at one point he was rough. 7 of 31 or something. He threw 3 interceptions in that game. I would say for the whole team, if you lack for motivation going into this one, other than just trying to win a game, you could put on that tape last year and go, I will be better. I must be better. I am very motivated to be better than this, than in this matchup last year. And, you can, I think Baylor is a slight favorite in this game. I've seen already as we are talking
the line
here,
they're like
a 2-point favorite, were the Bears.
BetMGM has Texas Tech as we record this as a 1-point favorite now. This line will probably bounce back and forth all week.
Yeah, it's within a point or two.
Basically a pick 'em.
Pick 'em. Yeah.
Basically.
So, but there you go. And it's going to be a primetime, Saturday night game under the lights. I would expect Texas Tech to have quite a few fans there, just because it's close proximity to the Metroplex and some of their alumni bases in South Texas, and so we shall see.
Yeah, if a Tech player, coaching staff, anybody can't. If your fire's not lit for this game, then your wood is wet. So,
okay,
yeah. You going. All right, last question as we're kind of running out of time here. This one's from Ted. He said, Level, can you put a percentage chance that Under Armour will be the apparel sponsor for Texas Tech next year? And if it isn't Under Armour, how soon do we hear an announcement?
I would put the number at 50-50. It's going to be either Under Armour or Adidas.
Okay.
I think I would tell you that's a fact. So one or the other. I think over the next 2 to 3 weeks, you'll hear something. I don't know. I don't pretend to know how this gets reported, though. I don't know if this is something the school reports, whoever has been awarded that contract, if they report it, if it's a collaboration. But it is a big deal, and I do expect Texas Tech to be in a much better position with that aspect than they are currently. So you're either going to get a really good deal from Adidas, or you're going to get a much better deal from Under Armour. And
you already
have, and then away you go. I can only just say 50-50 because I think Adidas has extended an offer, but Under Armour can match it, and I can't pretend to know what they will do. They have every right, and they negotiated that right to be able to offer that, or to match it, I should say.
So is it the deal expires, I think, at the end of June, the current deal. When do they have to have something set in stone for this new deal? Do you know that date? Like
like I said, it'll be the exclusive negotiating period's over with.
Okay, so
once an offer is made, and then the other group can kind of match it at some point. Yeah, they'll know here by mid-October at the latest, I would say. But again, I don't know when everybody else becomes aware of that. And then you won't notice a thing until that expires, and if it's Under Armour, maybe you will never notice a thing, a change difference.
Yeah. So there you go. All right, Level. We're pretty well out of time. We will do this again next week, hopefully after a road victory. It would be great to knock down that wall against the Baylor Bears, and we'll see if Coach McGuire and co can do that.
I'm all about knocking down walls, man. Whatever it takes to win, man. I don't care. Figure out a way. Ugly, not ugly. Ground and pound.
Yeah.
Air it out. 59 to 58, 1-0. I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah, sign me up. And but I appreciate it, Woodman. Appreciate the time with you, and thanks for taking care of me on these, and enjoy being with you, and hope everybody has a good week. Keep hope alive, and again, winning is better than losing. So hopefully everybody's in a much better in better spirits this week.
I bet so. Thanks, Level. That's
Yes,
Chris
sir.
Level. I'm Chois Woodman. You've been tuned into the Ask Level podcast, brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.